Hello again. As you may or may not know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and INE has invited me down to their offices down here in Durham, North Carolina to interview real IT and networking professionals. Today I'm here with Charles Stizza, Customer Support Engineer at Cisco Systems.
That's right. I'm glad that you took the time to interview me.
Yeah. So tell me, what is a Customer Support Engineer at Cisco Systems?
Sure, yeah. So this is, most people in the industry know this as TAC.
Okay,
so
yeah,
that's, we basically, we are the support for, whatever product line that Cisco has. For example, if you buy a support contract for your Nexus switch,
Yeah.
you're gonna get support from us here in RTP. Actually, we have several teams, obviously, but our local team here, we support, the team not I'm on, we support the Nexus switches line, so things like 7K, 5K, 3K, that sort of thing. So.
Okay. So when you say TAC, what does TAC mean?
So it's actually Technical Assistance Center, I think is what it stands for. So
Okay.
it's just basically, anything that you're doing with that switch, protocol-wise. Well, we have several teams. Like we have teams that support routing protocols on it, but our team we're considered the platform team. Okay. So for example, if you're configuring OSPF on your 7K and you need some help with that, you would go to our routing protocols team. But if there's some issue with that, let's say we have a hardware misprogram, it's something that's specific to that platform. You would work with us, and of course, problems that customers have aren't just, hey, I can't configure it. Is usually they have it configured correctly, but it's still broken. So that's kind of where we come into play. It's things that break that really shouldn't break. So that
shouldn't break. Okay. So then you have about 10 years experience, right? Ish.
Yeah, it's a little
11.
Yeah, 11ish. Yeah, let's call it around 11. Yeah, sure.
Let's call it even 50. We'll just call it 50.
Yeah, no problem, man.
So you started on your resume. Your first thing here is logistics coordinator at Smithway Motor Express.
Yeah.
So how do you go from supervisor of regional dispatch? Because this is a real job. So like a lot of people we interview, their first job is, I worked at McDonald's. And so you go, oh, okay. So if you were a bartender, it's obvious how you go Cisco or whatever. But like if you're already a supervisor of regional dispatch operations, pretty decent. How do you go from that to getting into technology?
Sure, great question. So when I graduated from college, I needed a job. I'll be honest, in the interest of candor, I didn't have like this vision, I want to do this, I want to do that. I really did not know what I wanted to do when I got out of school. I didn't really care. I just wanted to I knew I needed to have a job, right? That's all. So I went out, I got my parchment, my diploma in hand, Bachelor of Science, and I got a job, right? I just went out, I just went around and found the job who was hiring. And I had been working part-time at school in trucking. That's all I knew. My dad was a mechanic, and my grandfather was a mechanic, and so we knew trucking. So that's what I did. I went to a trucking company that saw, oh, you have a little education here, so we think you'd be a good dispatcher. And so I did that for about 4 years, and it was decent pay. And that's, in a nutshell, that's why I went there.
Okay. Yeah.
But because I think what you're getting at here is, well, what made you transition to IT? Very simple. I just got bored. I just got bored. It was not intellectually satisfying. There's so much more to employment than getting a good paycheck, right? And once you work something that you realize, hey, the money's good, the benefits are good, but boy, when I'm sitting at my desk from 9 to 5 and I'm just not satisfied with what I'm doing, it's a terrible feeling. So I said I need to do something that I could transition to something that I think I would like, and I thought about IT for a few years, but I thought at the same time, boy, I never could do that. I didn't have much confidence. But I really one day just said, I need to do this. I need to make a jump. And so I literally quit and just made a kind of a plan to get into IT. And what I did was I got my A+ certification. And so after getting that certification, I did my Network Plus certification. And then I got an entry-level IT job. So that's how I transitioned.
So you quit before you even had anything?
I did something that you should never do. Is I quit my job before I had another job. And your dad says that. You hear this all the time. Never quit your job. But I was so frustrated, and I was just I needed to make just a quick change. So I made that jump. And my concern at the time, I wasn't thinking about money. I was thinking, can I get to a job that will make enough money that I like doing? And so that's what I did.
So deciding on the A+ and the Net Plus, did somebody give you that advice? Did you just hear the radio and hear, oh, they told me to go A+? Like, because that's the thing, that's the problem, is everybody says, I want to get into IT, but then how do you do it? So what was the actual, like, were you given advice, or how did you decide to go on that path?
Yeah, sure. So the A+ and CompTIA, who offers that's their certification. It was really word of mouth in the industry. People that I knew were in the industry. That it was kind of a well-known entry-level certification. It was attainable. Now, I knew about, for example, the CCIE, and I knew that wasn't where I was at. So it wasn't even like an option. I didn't care about that. So what I wanted to do, it was kind of twofold. I wanted to get some knowledge. But instead of just kind of reading books or tearing apart computers, I wanted to have something to show for it. So I felt that the A+ and the Network Plus were a good fit for that.
Okay, cool. So then let's kind of start at the beginning then. So from Summit University, you're in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And I notice you don't say what your bachelor's degree is.
Actually, my bachelor's is just a bachelor's degree, and it's a long, convoluted story behind that. But Summit University actually used to be a Bible college. It's actually called Baptist Bible College. And they upgraded or whatever, they recertified or whatever you call it to a university. So all the degrees transitioned to just bachelor's. So that's the story behind it. So officially my bachelor's degree is in nothing. But the classes I took were in theology, Bible, philosophy, but I didn't actually have a major, believe it or not.
Huh, interesting. So then you did go get your master's. We'll talk about that later because that's 2010. But then that's where trying to do the math here, because 2010 is when you get your master's. But in 2005, you're an adjunct instructor at Wilbur Wright College.
Great observation. So I got my first IT job. This is a funny story. So I went to Wilbur Wright College to take my A+ certification. Right? You have to go to I think it's Pearson or whatever I forget whoever Pearson View I think it is that they were. So I went to take the certification, and I passed the exam. Right? And I was pumped. And as I'm walking out, one of the administrators says, "Hey," he's like, "Have I seen you around here before?" I'm like, "Nope." And she's like, "Well, where did you take your A+ classes?" And I said, "Well, I didn't take classes. I just studied. I got a book and I studied for 2-3 weeks, and I had some knowledge of it." And she said, we have an A+ class here, and we can't get our students to pass the exam. Would you be willing to teach our class for us? This is a true, 100% true story. Would you be willing to teach our class? And I'm on the inside, I'm thinking, like, this isn't real because I just passed this, and you want me to teach it? But I thought, well, I did pass it. So I guess if they can't pass it, I'm qualified. So, of course, I'm not going to say no. So this was actually a part-time job I got teaching, at the community college there in Chicago. So, and I taught that for several years, part-time, concurrently to my full-time role.
Really? Interesting. So then you got to Chicago. So was there any interesting story between Pennsylvania and Chicago?
I actually am originally from Northeast Ohio, Youngstown. I went to school in Northeast Pennsylvania. So I actually was technically, when I was done from school, I relocated back to Ohio. But then the company I was with moved their office to Chicago. Actually, they closed their office. So that's really how I transitioned to Chicago, was through the logistics company. And by the way, they're not in business anymore. So
so then the help desk job, or your first job, that's the special agent at Geek Squad.
So I was actually with Geek Squad. I'm sure you've heard of them, and worked for Geek Squad. Listen, let me explain something. Did I want to work for Geek Squad? Was it like my dream? Absolutely not. But one thing I learned, in all seriousness, is that you cannot think of any job that you're better than. You know what I mean? You have to really, if it's someone's offering you a job, you cannot have the mentality, I'm going to go there, I'm better than this, but I'm going to do it and kind of just as all I can get, and always kind of like have your nose. I think that's the worst approach. So my approach was, this is what I have now, and I'm going to work this to the best of my ability. I'm going to do the best job I can. And I have found when you make those investments, you're investing in your reputation, right? You invest in reputation, you get promoted very quickly. And so I went from, and I'll use specific numbers. I don't mind. I was hired there, I think, at $32,000, which it's not fabulous money, but within 2 years I was making double that, right? So case in point, you just put your head down, you have a good work ethic, you invest in by investing in your reputation, you're investing in yourself, right? And also other certifications I did at the time. And so yeah, I worked that job. Was it humbling to wear a little black tie? Yeah, absolutely. And I still have my Geek Squad badge. I'm very proud. It's a proud thing. I'm badge number 2592. So.
Oh, yeah. So then, I guess that's one thing with Geek Squad. Like with a lot of these retail type companies. Like I was talking to an Apple Store employee, and again, you see the retail person, and you're like, oh, that sucks. Why the hell are you here? And what you don't see is there actually is a lot of opportunity that's just simply behind the curtain, so you don't see it. So with Geek Squad, you were there for like 3 years and 3 months.
Exactly 3. Yeah, right.
3 years.
Yeah.
So how much opportunity for advance? Because obviously you go into Geek Squad, you just see the person behind the desk, but they do small business support. They actually do a lot of things people don't realize. How long could you stay there reasonably and progress in your career if you wanted to?
Yeah, sure. It's great. So my first job there wasn't the special agent. It was actually, I was behind the counter. Okay. I was the guy behind the counter taking. And trust me, was I thrilled about that? Because I'm like, well, I'm in retail. This is something that has such a bad reputation. This is what you don't want to be doing. You know what I mean? But again, I just did the best work that I possibly could. And people around me complained about how they didn't like to be there. They didn't, oh, this is, I'm going to be doing this and that. And I didn't do anything. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying this is what I did. Yeah. And within 6 months, I was able to get a new role in there, the on-site role. Yeah. And I was out of that. You know what I mean? Okay. So I will say that for me, my experience was there's lots of room for advancement. Yeah. If you do a good job, if you are honest, all those qualities you want in an employee. I would say my experience was fabulous. I had great advancement opportunity. Yeah. Is that the experience of everybody? Of course it's not. But my experience was very good.
Okay. Yeah. Huh. So then you go from there, and then Windows Systems Engineer for 3 years at SWC Technology Partners. So who's that? What were you up to there?
Yeah, sure. So SWC Technology Partners is a great company there, and it's actually in Oak Brook, Illinois. There, okay. And they cater to small medium business, and Microsoft partner, Cisco partner, and I believe they're a VMware partner now. But that was kind of my big break. That was where. When they called me and offered me the salary that they offered me, I was like, you know what I'm saying? I felt like it was it was kind of like, okay, now I feel like I've got some experience, and now I can command a higher market, a better value, So I feel like it was like the first role where it was like, I felt like I was making good, I felt very rewarded basically. Yeah. So, but yeah, basically went there, was there for about 3 years, and I was actually on site at one of the customers for about 3 years there. Okay. So I was a consultant and basically handled officially SaaS support there. But it was interesting, again, applying the idea of I'm going to do the best I can while I'm here. Yeah. While initially my role was to be kind of this like go-to person between SWC and the college. So basically, let's say, for example, they had a network upgrade project. My job was to project manage that and get the right people plugged in, consultants plugged in, but I didn't want that. I wanted to do the work. I wanted to be, so I say, listen, with the right attitude, I say, please allow me to work on this project. I will do a good job for you. I'll be accountable, all the things that are necessary. And so I got a chance to work on a network upgrade project, very large wireless LAN project, a virtualization project, storage area network project, technologies that I, years ago never even heard of before. Okay, so it was really, again, applying that principle of being the best engineer you can, doing the best work you can, being ambitious, having that eagerness to want to learn, applying all that stuff. It's very rewarding there. Okay, so that's kind of in a nutshell what that role was about.
So how did you go from Geek Squad to SWC? Did you actually put out your resume? Did they find you on LinkedIn? What was that then?
Yeah, sure. So I actually, at the time, it was dice.com, and I think Dice is still around, I'm pretty sure, but I put my resume on Dice, and they actually called me on Dice. Yeah, they called me up, and at that time, I was looking for something else. I wanted to kind of make the next jump up, So
I guess that's one of the questions. So a lot of the newer people, they're at places like Geek Squad or whatever, and they are scared crapless about if they put their resume out, their boss will find out, and then they'll be scrubbing toilets for the next,
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that's something to worry about?
I think it is a valid concern because everybody's interested in retaining talent. But you got to do what you got to do. If you wanna, if you wanna put your resume out there, I think it's worth having a fair conversation. My opinion is this: if you have a manager that is going to scold you because you're trying to get the best for you, then you need to change your manager anyway. You know what I mean? So I mean, I know that's maybe behind the sky advice when you're in a hot seat, but that's how I've always felt. I mean, if your manager is not on your side and he cannot accept that, hey man, I want to get the best for me, I want to get the best for my family, then it's time for a change anyway. So, but so to answer your question, I think that I understand the concern, but you also need to realize that you have to look out for yourself and do what's best for you. And everybody should be on your side. And if somebody is not pointing you in the direction of allowing you to do what's best for you, make those best decisions for you, then they're irrelevant anyway.
So do you think, especially at that level, should you give the manager a heads up you're looking for a job, or should you just give them the flat notice?
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. In my opinion, I have never given the manager that, hey, I think I'm going to quit like in 6 months. I don't think that that's reasonable. No manager should expect that from you.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think you're required to do that, because I think that will kind of, I think you're giving them a little bit too much courtesy, because now they say, well, we have these projects coming up, but we're just going to kind of send you around these. And then what happens if something doesn't work out and all of a sudden you can't make change? Now you're kind of, it makes you look bad. So I would say that, it really depends on how you phrase this, but telling a manager, hey, I'm going to quit in 6 months because I'm looking, maybe that's not the right way to do it. I mean, I have never done that. So I guess I'm not sure if I answered your question well, but I think that you need to have these conversations maybe more subtly, instead of just, hey, I'm going to quit in 6 months. I'm thinking back about what I did. I mean, the conversations I had when I was with Geek Squad, I didn't really have a central manager per se. It was a little more diffuse, so it wasn't like, I think everybody kind of knew. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody kind of knew, hey, this guy, we can see he's kind of outgrown his role, so we know he's going to change. And in fact, after I quit, I'm still in contact with this. They said, yeah, Charles, we knew that you were going to move on. We knew that. So I suppose it wasn't relevant in that case. From SWC, when I quit there, I didn't really have any conversations except when I said, hey, listen, I'm ready to move on. Here's my 2 weeks. But it ended up being, I stayed, I think, another 6 weeks there, I think, just to, hey, we need to finish up some projects and leave on good terms. So, I mean, but that was my experience, so I don't know if I answered you too well there.
No, that's good. So I guess that is a question though, with the actual notice. So back in the day, 2 weeks was a standard, but now with technical stuff, and the fact of the matter is you may actually be the only one that knows a lot of things. Do you think 2 weeks is still reasonable, or should you give 4 weeks? Would you get?
Yeah, sure. So I would say you should work with, you need to get the temperature of your employer and be flexible. Okay. But I think 2 weeks in most cases is not reasonable. I mean, unless you have something that you just, again, hat in hand, good attitude, and not screw you. But if you really have something, I have got to take this opportunity and I've got 2 weeks, then they should work with you. But I think that 2 weeks is for most IT jobs where you've got a highly technical role. Let's face it, some of these jobs are very difficult to fill. And so someone with 2 weeks who's got the keys to the kingdom, it's really challenging to not make things go into chaos. So I would say that for me, it's usually been longer than that.
So then you were with SWC for like 3.5 years, but then you flipped over to NCMC as a WAN field engineer, but only because it's kind of weird. You've got all this stuff, long, years, and then you got this 4 months.
Sure.
What was that story then?
Yeah, so I wanted to move down here, and I took a contract role.
Oh, okay.
And it was something that everything is good, no problems with it. But when I landed this role, I had the opportunity to work with Cisco, interview with them, and so I was there already. And when Cisco called me, I was like, listen, So I had to try. Let me go back to it. I had tried to work at Cisco a few years earlier, and I interviewed 4 times, and they didn't hire me. And so, they came calling again after I had gotten this role down here in North Carolina, and I said, I would like to work for you. I would like to work. It's a big name, there's lots of good reputation down here. But the last time I interviewed the guys, it was 4 interviews and I didn't get hired. So sure, I'll talk with you, but I'm not hopeful. So it turned out that after a few interviews they hired me. So so that answers your question. It was really about, I was on a contract role versus getting a full-time role. So that's how that turned out.
Okay. So
there's a key point though, something to keep in mind here.
Yeah.
The opportunities usually don't come up at a convenient time. You don't necessarily get to transition nice and clean.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens when it's not very convenient. So you have to weigh that. That's life, right? You have to weigh that. It may not happen. That great opportunity is not going to, okay, I'm sitting here and I'm waiting and it's just going to fall in my lap. Yeah. It just doesn't happen like that. It usually happens when, you just had a kid or, and I have three, so, or, something else is happening. So you got to keep that in mind. So that was a circumstance there.
Okay. But then you were saying you took that to come here. So you're in Chicago. So nice, big, juicy, techie city. So why would you come down here? And what was the plan there?
Funny story about that too. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to move down here because I have family, and and I love Chicago, great city, but when you start considering the cost of living, and I have family down here, it was really kind of a 40-60 maybe, something like that, 45-55 split. And we decided, I think I had to flip a coin because it was like, I wanted to stay, but we knew that we just had our first daughter. So my wife and I got to the point where, we needed to kind of get like settled in. Yeah. My daughter's gonna be 1 year old. And so wherever we do right now is gonna be pretty much permanent. So we decided to come down to North Carolina.
Oh, okay. And that's an interesting thing. We were talking about this off camera before, about how this is actually an affordable place. So if you look at most tech centers in the country, you look at Silicon Valley and you're gonna pay $1 million for a box. If you look at Seattle, you're gonna pay $800,000 for a box.
You see the guy at Google that lives in a truck?
What's that?
The guy at Google that lives in a truck?
I've heard of that.
Yeah, so he actually literally lives in a box. It's like a U-Haul truck. He put AC in and a generator. So you're right. Yeah, it's a box. Absolutely.
But so that's the thing is you look at Seattle, Silicon Valley, even Austin, Boston, New York, all the major places you think of major tech centers, and they're ridiculously expensive. Not like expensive, ridiculously. And then around here, am I missing something? It seems like shockingly affordable. And when you've got so much, you've got tech, you've got Cisco, you've got NetApp, you've got all these companies here, and yet. Like this is actually like a livable place, which doesn't make sense. Is that true?
The more I think about it, I don't know either. I really don't know, because you would think with all if you've got so many, RTP down here, and the pharmaceutical, not just tech, but pharmaceutical. Yeah. I don't know the answer. I don't know why that is. Really? But are you going to complain if you have to live, if you want to live down here? But it is true. You can make about the same money. In fact, I'm making, when I came down here, I didn't take a pay cut. I made the same money, and my housing is half, and my taxes are way less. So go figure. I don't know the answer. I don't know why that is, but it's just a reality. So why complain?
Well, is there any kind of weird trade-off here? Because I've been wandering around. It all seems very nice. Is there like some downside you don't see?
The trade-off, I would say, so culturally wise, the food, you don't have the food you have like in Chicago. I'm just saying, you don't have all the different, there was, for example, like a Lebanese restaurant my wife and we loved, and, not that there aren't pockets of culture around here. I would say, it's not Chicago, so I would say if you're used to that big city, you'll definitely see that. A minor one, well, not minor for people who have allergies, but the pollen is terrible around here. You see the yellow stuff around here?
Yeah. I'm driving out tonight.
The pollen is the humidity. Those are some things. But I would say other than those relatively minor. I can't really think of any like terrible trade-offs. You've got a good social group here. There's lots of universities. So it's a nice area.
Yeah. Okay. So you were with NCEMC when Cisco called you up to want to hire you.
That's right. Yep. They called me up. Yeah. They said, hey, we've got this job with we have this new server line, UCS server. We see you've got VMware. Yeah. You've got this experience. You've got this little niche where you've got VMware experience, you've got server experience, but you've got like heavy networking. And and there's a lot of people in there, but it's harder to find than you might think. That you've got lots of server experience and lots of this core like BGP, service provider type experience. That's actually harder to find. So I said we're interested in talking to you because we need someone that can kind of bridge the gap. Being Cisco, they had a hard time finding server people, right? Because again, their servers are new, and I said, that's interesting because I know nothing about your server, so why do you want to hire me? They're like, well, nobody knows anything about it, so we're willing to teach you. So, they came knocking, did an interview, and I think in that it was, it worked to my advantage to where I really had nothing to lose. And I'm not saying I was careless or flippant. I went to the interview. I was professional, but I really had no expectations. I was just I'm going to interview, and they're probably not going to hire me.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'll interview, and then I sat down with a panel. It was, I think, 2 hours. It was fairly grueling. They started asking me questions about things, and one by one, all of a sudden, I was like, wow, this interview is going well. They're asking me things about that I know, multicast, VMware. They're asking me problems that I've had in the field, and I said, wow, this is interesting. Maybe I have a shot with this. So.
Huh. So did you run into any problems, especially at 4 months? Because what a lot of people don't realize is when you're a contractor for another company, there's all kinds of weird, I'm not sure it's non-compete's the right thing, but basically like if Cisco steals you, that they then have to pay a stupid amount of money to the contractor, all that kind of stuff. Did you run into, did you see any of that? Did you have to deal with any kind of jumping through weird hoops?
Yeah, so officially, because I had my resume at Cisco, officially I had applied at Cisco. So it wasn't that they were recruiting me away.
Really? Okay.
So officially that, and they're Cisco's very ethical about that. They are above board about things. So I would say that there are those dynamics though.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. When I was with SWC, we had a few engineers that were supporting a customer, and the customer wanted to hire them away. And they worked out a compensation. So yes, there are those dynamics. Another issue is if you, for example, are working with a Cisco partner, Cisco will understandably not hire from a partner. They will not poach from a partner because it's just not the right thing to do, right? So yes, I would say, personally, I haven't run into many obstacles, but I know of them. And so, yeah, those things usually can be worked out just depending on the parties. And there is almost always a compensation piece to it. So
that works. So, okay, so you were doing hands-on stuff with Cisco Unified Computing, the UCS and all that. And then, so you're there for almost 5 years, 4.5 years, and then you go and be an education specialist.
Right, yeah, so I've been at Cisco about 5 years, and so I was 2 years with the UCS team. And then, I really still had this passion for like core route switch stuff, And so there was a role that came up that actually was a route switch instructor role. And I said, boy, I'm interested in that. I'm going to jump on that. So I did that for about 2 years. And so that just kind of brought me back from the server world, virtualization world, back into core route switch stuff. So it was just another kind of, get back into an area that I was a little rusty on. But it was something that I really wanted to get back into. And so I did about for 2 years. And then after that, I actually went back to TAC just because I wanted to get into the data set. So right now, currently, I'm with that. So TAC, teaching, TAC. So.
So then, did you find any issues with that, like going from hands-on to education?
Yeah, it was interesting because when you're in education, I was talking to some other engineers, and they made the comment, and we were discussing. I forget what we were discussing. It was, and they were actually from NetApp, and we were discussing like just some Nexus stuff, and they said, well, you're a teaching role. Are you really like, do you think you'd actually be able to do like an engineering job again? And I was like, wow, they don't really respect teachers, do they? You know what I mean? So I would say that there was definitely, with certain pockets, you have perception where you're teaching, so maybe you don't have real practical skills. Maybe you're kind of out of touch. Maybe you're kind of like, pedantic and high, pie in the sky, but not really down to earth with the types of problems we have. So I'd say there is that perception, potentially have a perception while you're teaching.
Okay. Do you think that could help? That could damage your career if you were doing it for too long?
Boy, that's a good question. I think that if you only taught, I think so, yeah.
Really?
I think so. I think that, if you're going to teach, I think that it gives you credibility if you've worked in the industry, or maybe you don't do maybe do consulting on the side. But I do think that to stay relevant, I think you need to have a good foundation actually practically working with the technologies. If you're just academic, you got a book and you read a book to exam, I think it does hurt you a little bit. I think it's good to have that real world experience. Again, there's a number of ways to get that, but I think that you need to have something to be able to teach from a first-hand standpoint. Otherwise you're not going to be relevant as a teacher if you can't talk about, if you're talking about a routing protocol, what problems have you seen in the real world? How have you troubleshot this? If you don't have those experiences, it's going to be difficult to be a good instructor.
So then when you were doing the teaching, were you just going, was it paint by numbers essentially, or were you creating your own training programs?
Yeah, good question. So what I was teaching, we had boot camps. For example, we had a routing protocols boot camp. So there was a fairly, I wouldn't say there was a lot of structure, but there was a fairly laid out what we're going to teach. So for example, in our boot camp, we taught EIGRP, OSPF, BGP, and I had a good deal of leeway on how I taught those. Okay, so I would say from a high level, the content was, what we're going to cover was fairly structured, but how I taught it was up to me. And so one of the things that I like to do is try to avoid using lots of slides, for example, and use hands-on. Let me show you how this protocol works. So I would say there was just a high level kind of here's what we want to end up at. But in terms of the content, I really just kind of did my own thing, and that seemed to work well.
So then you've had the hands-on, you've had the education now, and you've been with Cisco now for quite a while, right? 6-7 years.
I'm in my 5th year now, yeah.
So do you will you stay with Cisco for a long, long time?
Yeah, I don't see going anywhere. I'm really happy with Cisco. Really? I mean, I don't see.
Because we've had a lot of people, and maybe it's a difference in how long people have been there. But I've talked with some people, and a lot of people like it. But then there's a lot of people that say, oh, it was a lot better, and now it's become. And you can really see it on their face. They're not just kind of being snarky about it. They really are like, Cisco has changed. Sure. But you seem very happy with it. Do you not see?
Yeah, I mean, at a big, I would let me put it this way. At a very big company, I mean, you can definitely get pockets of culture. Let's put it that way. And I have nothing bad to say about Cisco. I have only positive experiences. Yeah. I have great managers. The culture is fabulous. Yeah. I'm not saying that people can't have a bad experience, but that can happen anywhere, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I understand that there's that element to people say, well, Cisco's not what it used to be. It was the good old days. But people also don't remember things as the same too. So I would say overall, I couldn't have asked for a better employer. Let's put it that way.
So then what do you face? So you're like 39, 40-ish. And so you're getting to that, and I know I'm about there. You get to that really like weird point where, most people figure, from your 20s to your 40s to about 40, you're doing all the hands-on stuff. And then from 40 on, you start transitioning into management. And I was talking with somebody yesterday who was like 55 and still doing hands-on. And he even said, being 55 and hands-on, he does get a little scared for his job. So are you looking at transitioning? Like, what do you see your next decade? What do you think? What would you expect your next decade to look like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would not. I mean, I understand that mold is kind of there, but I just can't see fitting into that mold. I want to do what is intellectually satisfying, and I don't see, for example, going to management. Okay. I would say that. I mean, let me try and address all those things. So one of them you mentioned was job security, kind of like you get a little bit older and maybe less energy, and the younger guy comes in. I mean, I'm sure that element's there, but we won't solve that problem right now. I would say that if you are very good at what we do, I mean, you need good people everywhere, right? I think if you're relevant, you have relevant skills, and you're an excellent problem solver, A+ engineer. I mean, there's a lot of B+, B- engineers out there. If you can be an A+ engineer, you're going to be very in demand. So I don't see myself going into management. I like what I'm doing. I like the everyday challenges of working on customer problems. Now, that might not be in the same role, but I really like to work on actual problems. So that's, in a nutshell, that's my answer.
That's right, okay. So do you think maybe like project management or just stay with the tech kind of hands-on?
I really like staying with tech, yeah. Really? Yeah, I really do. I don't see myself project managing. I actually, that's distasteful to me.
Distasteful.
That is something that I would not like to do. I know for sure. Wow, okay. I would probably more enjoy management than anyone else, So now I will say in tech, a lot of our managers are former tech engineers, and we joke with them, how untechnical they are now. So, I mean, that's the best answer I can give you. Right now, I enjoy solving challenging problems. It's the only thing that really kind of gets me up in the morning, is that, and you go to bed at night, maybe you worked on a problem, something, some switch is doing something that, wow, I've never seen that before. And it just really gets you going. It's really fun when things don't behave, and to solve that problem for the customer, and work with other engineers, it's very satisfying. So I can't see getting outside of that.
Oh, okay. But then with Cisco, because one of the issues too with hands-on is you start having kids, you start getting, and work-life balance. The thing is, the more hands-on you are, usually the worse the work-life balance is. So how does that work out for you in Cisco?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So I mean, the work-life balance, obviously, in terms of having kids and everything, you have to figure out where your sacrifices are going to be. One of the things that I don't have anymore is I cannot go home and study for 6 hours at night. You know, I mean, so for example, right now I got you know my certs. I got VCP, I've got MCSE, I've got CCNA, CCNP.
Yeah.
I don't have my CCIE yet because I don't have the time to invest to get that as quickly. Is it on the roadmap? Absolutely. Am I working on it? Absolutely, I am. I got my master's a few years ago. Okay, I had to make a decision. That's right after we had our second child.
Yeah.
I could get my master's now, or I can go for the CCIE. I decided to get the master's degree. Okay. And I said, I'm going to get the master's now, and I will, the CCIE it's still on the roadmap. I'm still working on it. Yeah. It's just going to take more time. Yeah. So I'd say that, you know, there are those sacrifices to where you just don't get to study as much as you used to, right? Yeah, yeah. But I will say this, though. One offshoot benefit is that when you have less time when you're at work, you know that you're not going to be able to go home and work on this problem. Yeah. You become super efficient. You become super focused. I've found that I'm able to be much more focused because I know that I have 90 minutes to work on this problem. And if I do not solve it now, it's going to be staring at me tomorrow. So you become more efficient. So I would say that it's not as bad as, you know, once you have kids and things, it's not as bad. But yes, there are those very real sacrifices, you know, choices you have to make. Where are you going to prioritize that? So.
Yeah. Oh. And then, so that's interesting because I've been talking with people, and you guys apparently are like the smartest people in the world down here, because you have folks like getting their CCIEs in like 6 months and like double CCIEs. And like literally, I was just talking to one person with a double CCIE explaining why he could do a triple CCIE, but then people look down on you if you have a triple C. Like, what the hell? Like, at least where I'm from, like a CCIE is like, wah. So in 2010, you decided to go for network engineering management master's degree. Mm-hmm. So why that? Especially if you want to stay curiously enough, because you want to stay hands-on. I would have thought you would go CCIE. Why did you go masters?
So the master's doesn't expire, quite honestly. You know, I mean, a master's, I would say that the CCIE is, I mean, obviously it's an industry-wide recognition, but the master's is going to have wider appeal in other domains, right? So if I take a master's degree to, let's say, I don't know, a healthcare, you know, I want a position in healthcare, the HR is going to understand a master's degree versus probably understand a master's degree over CCIE. So I would say that there are some advantages of having that master's degree. And again, it's what you get it and it's done. I don't have to renew it. So, but it wasn't like black or white. It wasn't like, oh, I must get it. I wanted to do both, but I had to make a decision. So.
And then you went to DePaul University. Was there any decision process on that? Why that versus somewhere else?
Sure, yeah. So funny, the person that hired me at Wright College 10 years earlier, I just sent them a random email and I asked her, I said, listen, I'm looking at a master's degree. Can you tell me what schools are, you know, like for technology, for networking, what are you seeing as good? And she gave me a list of 5 schools. And quite honestly, DePaul was the least expensive. so that's what I went with. And that's all. I wanted to settle on a master's degree. And you know that a degree is, you know, you forget half of, you know, after a few years. So I mean, it's something that you get. And you know, the classes I took were network engineering, and so it was just kind of like that credential you get that is, you know, from DePaul, you know, I got it, and just to have it there, you know, and you know, I felt, you know, I'm not trivializing, but it's an important part of your resume, right? It's something to have on there. I think it adds balance to your resume. So, you know, you know, you have to have experience, you know, college and certification. I think that those 3 things together, you know, if you have all experience and you don't have the other 2, then you know, it's harder to get a job. Let's face it, right? So
fair enough. Now, was that an online or an in-person school? Yeah,
it's actually both. The program I was in, and that was another important aspect because I knew that I wanted to be mobile. Is that it was actually a distance learning program or in class, identical class. They record the classes and then you can do it. So after 1 year of doing that, I realized it's way better to sit in my underwear and go to class versus having to, you know, take the train downtown every night. Just way better. So I mean, you know, I think, you know, there's no reason to go to class anymore.
Okay. So then you got, so that's your master's, but then you've got a whole, where is it? There's somewhere in here. You got a pile of certifications. So you have a lot of stuff. So you've got your CCNP, your CCNA, your VMware, your MCITP, your MCSE. So where did those certifications come in? Did you get those because you needed them? Just because? How did that feel?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I didn't sit down with some grand plan and say, boy, in 10 years, I'm going to have 8 certifications. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
It was fairly pragmatic. It was kind of like the first certifications, the A+, for example, lower level ones. And when I say lower, I don't mean anything condescending. I just mean they were just, they're entry level certs. I got those, as I mentioned before, just to have something to show for my efforts to get into the industry. I felt those were a natural result. Some of the Microsoft certs were a partner requirement. We had to have those. Yeah, so it wasn't that I just got it because, hey, I want to show. I got it because we're a partner and we need this, and so I'll do it. And so those were a few of the Microsoft certs. And then I maintained the Microsoft cert just because once you earn it, you kind of want to hang. It doesn't make sense to let it expire. No. The Cisco certifications, on the other hand, there was no requirement for those. I got my CCNA just because someone said, hey, we want you to get some more networking skills. But that was the one that really was, to me, the life changer. I don't want to sound corny or anything, but that was the one that really opened my eyes to networking. Huh. And I got the CCNA, and I built a lab. Yeah. And on eBay, I got all the equipment, and I really sat down and buckled down. And it was the first certification that I thought, wow, this is very difficult. I just got my teeth kicked in. When I went and failed it I just got my teeth kicked in, right? Yeah. But it was the same time, you go one of two directions there. You're going to give up, or you're going to try harder. Yeah. And I was almost at the point, why? Am I really cut off for this? And I said, no, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get. And so, I set up the hardware. I got router switches, and it was so fun. The journey was fun, And so that's what really got me kind of into a. Turn the corner into IT and just kind of this whole new world of different technology. Routing protocols and BGP, things I never heard of before. Yeah, so that's what the kind of Cisco. And then after that, I said, well, if CCNA is this good, I guess the CCNP is good. And then I just got completely humiliated when I first took the CCNP routing exam. I just got destroyed on it. But again, it had to do the whole thing over, but at a higher level. Okay. So that's it.
That's cool. And then you have a VMware certificate too for Professional 5. There's a big question. So I get a question from a lot of people. They want to get into cloud computing, and so they all want to go for that VMware certification. Is that a good certification if you just want to go cloud? Is it a good generic certification, or should you only do it if you're going to use VMware?
Well, VMware is so prolific. Almost everybody has some virtualization in their network, and the biggest vendor is VMware. It's the most widely deployed. Okay. So in my mind, just by virtue of the deploy base, it makes sense to get familiar with something that you're probably going to run into in the field. Okay. Now, in my case for the VCP, the reason why I got it was because Cisco is an ASP for VMware, so we actually were supporting VMware. Okay. So it was a requirement to maintain that. We had to have our VCP. Now, I may have done it anyway, but that was what really fueled that. And of course, there's a class requirement with that, blah, blah, blah. So, but I will say for the VCP, you mentioned like cloud computing. Listen, there's so much to know out there, so many different products. There's no way you're going to get a cert that is like, boy, I want this to be 100% relevant. Listen, man, you're going to get a cert, and you may never touch, let's say 80% of that, but it's going to help you become a better engineer. You're going to sit down, if you do it right, sit down, set a lab up, watch a good instructor for those areas that you need get training on. Video on demand is I'm not saying this because we're at INE. I'm saying it because video on demand is, it's the way to go. It's the best thing. And if you can afford a boot camp, by all means do a boot camp. But in terms of the cloud and stuff, there's so much to know out there. Just pick something that interests you, and you will be. I think you'll be satisfied. But don't expect that. Boy, I'm going to get a cert. Now, boy, I'm the. You have so many different so many different providers. There's Amazon and Opens. There's so many things. You can't expect to get certified in all of it. So.
Now that's one thing with Cisco, because you got these certifications, and so I was talking with people before about whether Cisco helps you train in things like Juniper, but like with MCSE and all that kind of stuff, do they have tuition assistance or whatever? Like if you didn't have your MCSE, would they help you get your MCSE?
So are you talking about like Cisco, would they give you assistance on get?
Yeah, obviously you get Cisco assistance, but
sure.
If you were going for like something, a different type of certification, would they help you?
It all depends on the business case.
No, really.
Like if you can, and I think most managers, if you are looking at professional development, most managers are going to consider anything reasonable. Whether it's, helping you pay for some books or a class or, your certification voucher, of course. Yeah. It's not across. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule, but I think if you're going to manage to say, hey, I want to become a better engineer, and I think this will help me, and it's at least somewhat relevant to your job role. I don't see any managers going to have a problem with that. So the answer to your question is that yes, I've had help with, paying for vouchers and classes, that sort of thing. So.
And so they will help you pay for even like books. It doesn't have to be regimented, this is a boot camp or something.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, it's all going to be. I think it's discretionary, but absolutely. And actually, one of the nice things about Cisco is that we have the Safari. I don't know if you're the Safari online books subscription. No. Everyone gets that. I mean, if you want it, you can get it for free. So Safari Books Online has basically, there's lots and lots of books on there on Microsoft. So that's one resource we have. But yeah, I mean, answer your question that I think it's all about if you got the enthusiasm and you want to do something, what manager is going to stop you if you can make a good, if you want to professionally develop yourself? I mean, they shouldn't, right?
Hopefully. And then I guess the final thing we're going into is so you actually have publications on your thing. So Microsoft Network Load Balancing on UCS-B series servers from Cisco Systems. So now, when you have publications on your LinkedIn profile, is this just a gold star? Hey, it's something nicer than a blog post, or is this something useful for your career?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, one of my motivations, you mentioned LinkedIn. Yeah. I mean, you've just got to be able to market yourself. Yeah. I mean, you have to be able to, and it's not a pompous or arrogant thing. I mean, it can be, but it's it's one of the things that you need to in the industry. You need to be able to demonstrate your value. And so having a LinkedIn page, a resume, is a way to market yourself. Yeah. So I would say that the publication is twofold. It was written to solve a very practical problem at the time, but putting it on my LinkedIn page is, hey, this is what I've written. Here's what I've worked on. Okay. Does this mean I'm an expert at every aspect of Microsoft? No, it doesn't. It just means that I worked on this problem. Yeah. It was an important problem. We solved a problem the customer had, and this is the result of that. Okay. So I would say that there's always a little bit of marketing, and if it's on LinkedIn, it's always marketing. Yeah.
So since this is with Cisco Systems, is this like a white paper I would download, or is it part of a book?
Yeah, no, this is an external. We can call it a white paper. Yeah. It's a page there. And Cisco definitely encourages any type of public document if it's relevant to a customer problem. We want to get that out there. Quite honestly, we don't want you to call us if we can solve it with if we can solve your problem and you don't have to make a phone call and we put a document out there, that's better for us, Okay. And so there's definitely Cisco encourages you to publish if if you've got something important that needs to be said. And obviously there's some right channels to go through there. And it's really about just providing good information for the customer. That's what it comes down to.
And now, is it hard to get published through them? Like, obviously there has to be some red tape, but is it, do you get it thrown back at you, figure out how to use a comma or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's, we have professional writers that there's just some guidelines you have to follow. Okay. I think that isn't the hard part though. They'll help you format it. And I mean, I've seen them kick back things for formatting issues. I've never had a problem with that. But I think that if you just understand their formatting, it's not an issue. Again, because I was teaching for a few years there, I got to know like some people, and they helped me, hey, this is all format. So I'd say, I wouldn't say there's a great amount of red tape. I mean, the most important thing is that do you have something important to say that should be published worthy? That's the most important. That's the hard part. Once you get that, everything else is just details.
Okay. And then, so with your career, seems to be trucking along pretty well. So is there anything that you would have done differently?
Sure. Yeah, I would have gotten. I mean, if we're investing with hindsight, which you're not, you can't do that. But okay, so if we had a time machine to go back, I absolutely would have started way earlier. Invested in the things that I did about 4 years earlier. Yeah. Okay. Because it was a lack of confidence that's kind of stalled it. And I waited until I just couldn't stand what I was doing to get into IT. Yeah. And I would have done it sooner and had more confidence. I mean, if you've got that drive, and you want to accomplish something. I mean, it's a great industry. There's no shortage of work, right? Yeah. So it's not like we have a work shortage. So, but the answer is, I would have done it much sooner. That's what I've invested sooner.
And then going forward, so if you had a kid that was 18 or 19, obviously the technology world in the past decade, like everything else, has changed a lot. So how you got in 10 years ago, like I say, when I tell people how I got in 15 years ago, I would not give you the same advice. It would be stupid advice today. So what would you, if you had an 18-year-old kid who wanted to get into this, what would you tell them to do? What would be your advice for now?
Look, man, there's something that isn't going to be go out of style. It's good work ethic. Yeah. Okay. I mean, do not take a job that you think that you're better than. I mean, whatever you're doing, do the best of your ability. That would be my advice. So yes, technology changes. I mean, next year we could be, who knows what's going to come out. Yeah. That's all going to change. Knowledge is relative, but your work ethic, your reputation, you're going to carry that with you forever. You will not shake that. I mean, this industry, especially in this area, you'd be surprised of how small, this person's heard of that person. So first and foremost is reputation, work ethic. And then, along with that is you have to think about problem solving. People want good problem solvers. Whatever domain you're applying it to, okay, you need to learn the technology, be that learner. So after you get the character, the personal things right, you have to be a lifelong student. You're never going to stop learning in IT. I don't think that's going to change ever. There's always going to be something. Things are not going to get so automated to where we don't have to. I doubt it. I doubt things will be so automated that we don't need good problem solvers. So work ethic, reputation, problem solver. Those are the things that are I think are kind of timeless.
Do you think there's any technology you would focus on though? Would you still focus on Cisco? I don't know if you're
Sure, yeah, sure. It's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, I would say this: the way you can kind of insulate yourself from that is don't get too heavily invested in one technology. So for example, let's say 10, 15 years ago, for example, if you were an awesome routing guy, man, you were set. But not really so anymore. Yeah, we have a need for those people, but boy, you need to understand convergence. There's things are so wide now. So I would say, try to get a good understanding of how applications work, servers, but don't invest in one technology too heavily. Okay, if you like Cisco and you're interested, sure, get your CCIE, but also try to do your VMware stuff. And actually, by the way, Cisco certifications. We're pulling in SDN now, so it's not going to be this monolithic. Cisco is definitely working very hard to keep things relevant. Conversion with VMware. So I mean, get your VMware and get your Cisco. Try to stay a little diverse. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I think I answered your question.
Okay. And then the final question then, since you've got kids and you moved down here, do you see this as a good area? Like when your kids are adults, when your kids are 30, do you think this will still be a good area for technology?
I mean, my kids will probably want to move back to the city. I don't know. They're probably going to want to move away from us. I mean, right now it is. But who knows what's going to happen, right? You know what I mean? I mean, who knows what tomorrow's going to bring? I mean, by all accounts, if we look at economics, things are growing here. Lots of area for growth. I mean, there's a lot of economic reasons. So, I think so. But what do I know?
Fair enough. All right, well, thank you for coming here today.
Absolutely, thank you.
So this was Charles Stizza, Customer Support Engineer at Cisco Systems. Yet another interview that I enjoyed doing. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.